there, welcome back to the Coach Dave Academy YouTube channel. I'm Bart Horsten, and today I'll be taking you for a lap guide in the iRacing iR-04 around Spa. First, here's the hot lap. Okay, so heading out of the last corner, generally leave it to the right end of a flying lap, but here we're going to make sure we get over to the left side of the track quite early. For La Source, or turn one, my braking marker it's a little bit tricky here because as you can see the wall on the left side moves away from you and it's a bit hard to see the braking markers. So I'd probably recommend looking into the apex, and I use this. You got the 100 board in your peripheral vision there on the left-hand side, but braking when you see that red line here, just a bit in front of you. So that's kind of a good reference. I know it's a little bit tricky, and it's a corner you definitely rather under push the entry a little bit than over push because there's a huge straight after, especially in a car like this. So probably just keep that in mind. Just be a little bit early. Be aware of the 100-meter board and then where this red line is coming up. So keeping the car dead straight on the brakes down to second gear from fifth. And make sure you really get it slow before you go turn into the corner. Some people tend to carry a lot of speed, turn in really early. The most important thing here is just to get really well rotated, get the car straight early, and get a really nice early throttle pickup. And not much hesitation onto throttle either. As you can see there, pretty quick from when I start picking up the throttle to when I reach 100%. And that's going to make a huge difference to your run up a Rouge. And in terms of the track limits here, you can run pretty much up to the wall on the inside. I think if you run super close, say on this green bit right next to the wall, it's maybe not as good as running on the curb or the start of the green. So that's kind of where you want to be. But generally, as tight as you can go here. And then on the exit, you can now, with the current track limits, run all your tires over until you have just as long as you have, I think it's 2 tires or 1 tire on this secondary curb, this white curb, second part of this red and white here, then your lap will still be legal. So a lot of people don't use and abuse this enough, and considering the importance of this exit, you got to make sure every single lap you're maximizing this exit. So you can aim for that out of here. You can get on the throttle a little bit early, you think, because of that. you're going to straighten up the steering if it starts to slide around you and use all the track there. So first thing, start coming to the right-hand side of the track, just shortening the distance here. Even though it's all flat out, there's still a few little things we can do. Like here, we're moving over to the right-hand wall. Always, I think, do this for a Rouge. Move over to the right-hand wall at the start here, and then turn to the left quite early to open it up. Not as far over the left curb as we would be in a GT car, say. We might be over here somewhere, but in this, we just want to, because it's easy flat and there's not much steering we're putting on anyway, the most important thing is that we're not bottoming on the curbs and just carrying momentum. So I find this is kind of good enough, and you're not running the middle of the floor over the curb. Keeping the car straight and then gently turning in. Again, I use shortest line here, running up to the inside curb, but not running all over it. If you run over it, you will slow the car down a bit just because it'll get unsettled and potentially bottom on the bottom out. So good to keep the car nice and smooth over that. I also find you can run a little bit of this left curb. It doesn't really seem to slow the car down. It's quite smooth on this version of the track, so it's okay to run your left wheels kind of over the red and white part of this left-hand curve here, as long as the most important thing is keeping the wheel dead straight and just gaining those precious few hundredths down this long straight that you get for the whole exit. Here, staying to the right, turn in with the camera a little bit, and then just let the wheel out to the left-hand side. And then we've got a long time to think about our braking point for Le Combe. So for here, it's generally most cars it's around the start of this curve. The F4 can brake a bit later. As you can see, quite a bit later into there's not really much for braking references, unfortunately, which makes it super, super tricky, and you're decelerating from a really high speed. So I'd recommend you just have to do a lot of practice and make sure you look into the apex, because at the end of the day, that's what you're aiming for. That's what you're judging your speed for. So that's the best way to start getting used to corners like this, where you haven't got hard braking references on the left-hand side of the track. So curb-wise, you can take a lot of curb here. You can run all the way up to the grass, and pretty much in every car in iRacing, you want to run all the way up to the grass on the inside curve here. You can see I'm taking fourth gear. You can try third, but I find it overslows the car a little bit, so definitely go with fourth. All we really want to focus on in this right-left part is just carrying as much speed as possible while giving us just enough room for the last part of the Le Combe chicane section. So you'll see here, I start picking up the throttle, then I lift again just to get enough rotation through the left-hander here, and then back to full throttle. We have to keep it completely pinned through the last part of Le Combe. So a really tricky corner, and it's just about building up and carrying as much speed as possible while still also taking the last right flat. That's kind of the way to go about it. So carrying that minimum speed through this part of the track, going throttle quite early, rotating the car by lifting a bit, and then early as possible get to full throttle. You should work the car as hard as you can. Once you get full throttle here, work as hard as you can to get back left to open this up. It shouldn't be easy to get back to the left-hand side. You can see here I don't even make it back to the left-hand side of the track. This shows you're carrying enough speed, so that's a good reference. And then don't really use the inside curb. It's just going to slow you down and unsettle a little bit. You can see I nibble it, don't really ride over it like in a GT car. Leaning on the exit curb, if you run the middle of the car over the green, it will bottom out, slow you down a bit, and if you go a little bit further, you can go off track as well. So this is pretty much the limit, I think, for an ideal lap. Sometimes you can run a little bit over this. So Brevage or Bruxelles is at third gear in this car, and super tricky. The car will want to snap on you in the mid corner. You can push the braking quite late. It's always a corner where you can't really push the braking that much, but in this car you can push it a bit. You can see it's just, I think really important here is just minimizing the distance in this car. You can see I quite early I dive for the inside line. I brake pretty straight on the entry, but you can see I bleed out of the brakes, turning quite early. Just make sure you're rolling a lot of speed while also keeping the distance down, staying pretty tight to the inside here, and having a nice early throttle pickup. And the car's very controllable on full throttle. Quite gradual though. It's not straight to full throttle, as you'll see in the bottom left. So just controlling the oversteer, it's super tricky corner, and you just want to be using all the track here. If you end up on the green part of the outside curb here, you've probably overpushed a little bit, but I'd say as long as you run up to the white line and maybe just lead on the curb, that's about where you want to be. So then working, again, super hard to get back to the right-hand side. I don't like the flat using the flat top of the green curb on the right, but certainly leaning on the red and white on the right hand side is quite useful and just helps open up this corner a lot. We're up to 4th gear now for No Name, and just a lift in this car, just a lift, but very loose, very tricky. You can see the car wanting to slide there. I find the main thing is just being really smooth with the steering. You can see in the bottom left, quite smooth. It's very easy here to get a snap and then have a correction, and that costs you a lot of time down this next straight. So if you can just carry as much speed as you can by minimizing the amount of time you're lifting, get to full throttle as early as possible while still being really smooth. It's a tricky corner, but it's just all about carrying that speed and getting the full throttle early. And I like to nibble on the curb. I think if you can run the middle of the car kind of over this line here where the red and white meets the higher curb, but it'll turn more, but I think it kind of overslows it and unsettles it. So I think this is about right usage wise. As long as you're taking the curb with your left wheels, it should turn enough. And then on the track limits on the exit, we can actually be a bit more aggressive than I am here. You can run until you have 2 of your tires on the red and white here. So you can definitely run a little bit further wide than I do on this lap. Easy one to get track limits though, so be aware with that one. Okay, so coming into Puon, fantastic corner. Up to 6 and then quickly back down to 5th. It's a very light brake, and this brake isn't so much about stopping the car as it is about just getting it turned in, especially on this the fixed setup. It's quite understeered, so we need to use the brake to pitch the car, get the weight on the nose, and help it turn this high-speed corner. And you can see really quite fast to 100% throttle for me here. And that's the main thing, you get enough rotation so you can get that quick throttle pickup for what is quite a long, kind of straightish, let's say, exit. I don't like this entry curve. I've seen too many people spin on iRacing. I'll use this entry curve. I don't think there's much advantage to using it, especially in a car like this. It gets unsettled quite easily. So just run up to the white line on the entry. Like I said, light brake down to 5th, and quite tricky to judge when to brake. Again, no real references. I think you just got to look into the corner, learn to judge your speeds. It's easy here to brake too early as well. So the best way to avoid that is by pushing the entry a little bit and looking to meet the inside around here. A lot of people turn a bit early, meet the curb too early, and then get on the throttle too early. Have to have a few goes getting to the throttle, I end up wide, get a track limit. So very easy to do here. So just keep that in mind. We want to get full throttle really early, get really hooked as close as we can to this inside curb. You don't really want to be hitting it because it will bounce you wide in a high speed corner like this. But it's all about accuracy, really carrying speed and being really accurate with hitting the inside white line there and not hitting the inside curb. And then this will push you out to the outside curb. In terms of track limits, you can now get away with, I think if you have 2 wheels on the red and white, like halfway along the red and white, you seem to be able to get away with it. It is a bit hit and miss though, this off track, I will say that. But you can definitely run about half a car width wider than I do here, but it's not always faster because you generally pick up a bit of understeer and end up taking more track. So a bit of give and take there. Okay, so then we're just taking it tight, being smooth with the steering, reducing the distance, then laying the car out to the right-hand side exit curb, get it back over to the left-hand side for Fagner or Piffpaff. This is really tricky corner. Don't push the braking in this car here. Don't go... It shouldn't feel super on the limit of the tires on the braking phase. I find every time I push the braking in this car on this corner, you don't gain. The main thing is you want to carry a lot of speed in, but not braking super late, if that makes sense. So down to 4th, making sure you reach the inside curve, really important. You can meet it a little bit later than this if you have to, but main thing is that we do get on this inside curve. It really helps turn the car. We're carrying as much minimum speed as we can, and then picking up the throttle to, again, carry more speed. It'll actually help turn the car as well if you get onto the curb. And then trying to open up just that little flick right before we set up the left to try and open up this last left-hander as much as possible, with a lot of time being fast off the exit here, a lot of time. So really important we bring it over to the right and open this up. You can see almost flat for me here on this lap, lifting down to about 80% throttle. I think if you get it perfect, it's probably flat with the right exit, especially on low fuel. So keep that in mind. Should be really fast, just keeping the throttle pinned down. And you will slide out a little bit as long as you have 2 wheels on the exit curve, on the red and white curve, and I just about here. It's pretty on the limit though. You will get away without getting it off track. But yeah, any wider than this and easily an off track, I think, easily. So quickly up to 5th and then very quickly back down to 4th for Stavolo. super, super tricky, very important. A bit like a rouge, huge straight after it, so you've got to get a good exit. Uh, this curb, this entry curb on iRacing, even though it's a bit banked, it's quite tall. You need to use it, especially in a car like this. Will make a huge difference to the amount of speed you can carry and how open the corner feels, because it feels like a very tight corner at times, especially in a car that's taking it this quickly. So yeah, make sure we're over on the left hand side. Try not to be over. It sounds bizarre, but it's not a long run, so you got to work to get left quickly. But you don't want to actually be over the track too quickly, because this Astro stuff isn't too great. There's a bit of a lip onto the curb, but as long as you meet the curb here and use all that, I think it really helps open up the entry. You can see it's only the start of the curve I use, and quite quickly I'm off it and turning in. It almost banks the car into the corner. Down to fourth gear, not a heavy brake. Once again, we're mainly braking here just to get the front in, just to help it turn. But this is all about carrying speed and, most importantly, a really, really early throttle pickup. And again, I also find a lot like No Name, not having too many moments on the steering. If you scrub the steering here, it really seems to affect the speed down the straight. So you can see I take both of the curbs. You can use all the curb on the inside. If you can even go a little bit more than this without getting off track, it probably slows you down a little bit on the exit. So I'd probably say this is about the most you would take. Really quickly to full throttle for me there. You need a lot of, have that commitment to just hit full throttle, because the exit's so long. It's such a big time differential between hitting the throttle early and reaching 100%. Not make sure you're not going to back out of it, and make sure you're looking for the exit of the track and how wide you're going to run, which is out here somewhere. Make sure you're looking for that exit really, really early. And in terms of track limits, it's quite tricky now. It used to be a bit stricter than this, but now you can't use all the AstroTurf, but you can use most of it. I believe it's 2 wheels on the red and white. So this is about the limit. I think you can run probably half a tire width wider than this. Maybe just, it's hard to say though. This is pretty on the limit. So tiny bit further than this. It's a super easy place to get track limits, especially in the race. So keep that in mind. But yeah, all about the exit here, all about the exit. There is a bump here. This will slow you down a little bit. So just keep that in mind. And then a really smooth turn in for the second part of Stavolo, which isn't really much of a corner for us, but it's still important to minimize the distance. There's also a bit of camber in the bottom of this right-hander, so it kind of just helps the car carry speed and turn smoothly if you get into the white line. And I hold the steering on here. You'll see I hold the steering lock on nice and smooth, but that's to shorten our distance up until Blanchamon. So staying on the right-hand side and straightening up the wheel here. As the truck goes to the right, we just stay straight. We go to the left, again into camber, shortening the distance. Back to the right-hand side of the track, opening up Blanchamon. Easy flat, this section. Again, it's just about minimizing steering scrub. I don't like using the exit curb. Doesn't really help us. And then here, only thing that really matters is that we're getting left in time for our braking zone for the final chicane. So you got this white line, safety car line, something along those lines. It's your best reference for understanding, am I going to get left early enough to get straight? So in this car, it's not too hard, and GT car a bit more tricky. But yeah, make sure we get left early. It makes a huge difference. So parallel to the white line, braking dead straight. I don't like using the entry curb in this car. In some cars, yes, but not really in this, because it gets a bit upset with that kind of thing. Going down to second gear, you can see I'm turning quite early here off the brakes and roll the speed up the hill. Now, this is a really important part, I feel, of driving a single-seater around this part of the track. We want to roll a lot of speed up the hill, because what you don't want is to be too slow for the right and then have to pick up the throttle really early because you're thinking, oh, I've slowed the car down too much, I have to get back on the throttle again. Then you speed up too much into the left-hander and you end up out here somewhere on the left-hand side of the track, and the car's not very nice to drive. So it's really important that we carry speed up the hill. So when you're thinking about not only braking late, but also, like I said, carrying speed into the apex, running as close as you can to the sausage curve here, super important as well. We just nick it. And same here, again, as close to the sausage curve as possible, and then straighten the car up for the exit. Like I said, I think that all starts with just rolling the speed in here. Once you feel like you got it stopped, rolling the speed up the hill, it will help stop the car as well. You see, I don't have basically no brake, 1% brake pressure at this point. So not much brake, just rolling a lot of speed in, just kind of settling the car a little bit. Then a little bit of throttle here will help kind of catch the rear as it slides over the right-hand curb. Also, just to give you a bit more speed, so you're not too slow between the two apexes. So yeah, and then a little bit of a lift. So in a car like this, lifting out to, you can see I lift out to 0% throttle here. That'll be enough to help the car turn if it's left-hander. So just, it's all about just a bit of a feel corner. Just, you're never going to get to full throttle between the two, but just blipping the throttle a little bit, carrying as much speed as you can, and then that lift to help get turned into the left-hander. Get as close to sausage curve as possible, and then a quick throttle pickup and focus on your exit, which track limits wise is just 2 wheels on the red and white, as with most corners on this track now. And yeah, again, being really smooth on the steering and cross to the line, staying tight to the right hand side, and then that'll give you a lap of Spa. So that was a lap guide in the iRacing iR-04 around Spa. If you want setups from people like myself, you can check out the Coach Dave Academy website. Make sure to like and subscribe, and you have any comments, make sure to leave them below. See you in the next lap guide.